facets of the story of America and how people were.
Opening remarks, which NPR obtained, that he really pushed back on this Republican-led impeachment probe before the House Judiciary and Oversight Committees. And he echoed some of the same statements made by the president's brother, James Biden, who also appeared before these same panels in closed-door testimony last week.
Now, did he say anything directly about Joe Biden's father?
Well, according to the statement, he said that his father did play a role in terms of his process of recovering from his addiction, but he played no role at all in his business dealings. And he also said that he was there to, quote, provide the committees with one uncontestable fact that should end the false premise of this inquiry. And he went on to say that his father was not involved in his business dealings as a lawyer, as an investor, as a board member, as an artist. He called the probe a partisan political pursuit that was built on a house of cards, and that it was based on lies told by witnesses with credibility, now in question as several are facing their own criminal cases. And he also reiterated, again, he made these mistakes and he squandered opportunities and privileges that were afforded to him, that he was responsible for that and making amends for it. But he said that his father saved his life, and what he got in return was a barrage of conspiracy theories and this impeachment inquiry.
All right, so how are Republicans reacting to Hunter Biden's testimony?
Well, they told a very different story from Hunter Biden and his legal team. The Republican chairs of these committees, that's Judiciary Chair Jim Jordan and Oversight Chair James Comer, were upbeat. Comer said that this was a great deposition. He claimed that Hunter Biden made, quote, contradictory statements. However, here he is talking to reporters.
I think this was a great deposition for us. It proves several bits of our evidence that we've been conducting throughout this investigation. But there are also some contradictory statements that I think need further review.
But Comer didn't elaborate on what those contradictions were when asked.
All right, so the impeachment inquiry, what now?
So he says, Comer says the next step is a public hearing, and now we're expecting Hunter Biden to get his original wish, which is he will testify publicly. At least that's the plan right now. Transcripts should be released in the coming days, but Republicans have a difficult road ahead in the House. It's a narrowly controlled chamber, and it's still not clear any of this will convince all of their members to move forward with this impeachment inquiry of President Biden.
That's NPR's Claudia Gusadas. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Support comes from Voltage, located in Oakley. Open Tuesday through Saturday, 10 to 5, or by appointment. You can stop in to view the constantly changing showroom displays and get fresh ideas for your outdoor and indoor living spaces. Voltage focused on bringing inspired living spaces to the tri-state region for 33 years. VoltageFurniture.com. That's VoltageFurniture.com.
Support comes from the First United Methodist Church in Middletown, Ohio, presenting the First Friday concert series from noon to 1 p.m. You can experience Chad the Crooner Brown, whose voice embraces the melodies of Sinatra and bygone times, March 1st. Details at myfumc.net. Middletown Community Foundation, the Barnett's Fund, and the Knoll Foundation sponsors.
Don't worry about waiting for a matching ring. Here's one now.
There it is, right there. It's from Barbara Cyber. Thank you so much for that, Barbara. And you can take advantage of the opportunity to triple your money right now when you call 513-419-7155 or when you give online at WVXU.org. Just like Brian Cottingham, who says there's something in your inbox. It's a donation. Well done. Becky listens to Bill Reinhardt. Yes. Reed Hartman, thank you. And Adrian Lyle says WVXU's local news is outstanding. I appreciate the local journalism. Well, thank you so much, Adrian.
Procrastinators, this is your time to shine. If you've been listening this week, you know we're having a fund drive, and we're nearing the end, which is your favorite time to jump in, right? And this is a great day to jump. It's Leap Day. We could use your help, and we welcome you with open arms and microphones at 513-419-7155 or give online at WVXU.org.
WVXU is my primary source for news, absolutely. Is it yours too? Well, welcome to the club of about 100,000 people who listen every week. Right now, Lucy and I are asking you to join us by becoming a member of WVXU. Call 513-419-7155 or give at WVXU.org.
Leap Day. It's a great day to make a $29 donation, and it's the best time to take the leap from being a listener to becoming a supporter. Call right now, 513-419-7155, or give online at WVXU.org. We have so many people to thank. Corinne says the 2-for-1 match and the monster truck match really got me. Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh, my goodness. Go ahead, do it again.
Okay. The monster truck.
Yeah,
boy?
go ahead.
Call 513-419-7155.
Oh, my stars. Okay. That, yes, in fact, was Lucy May, who both of us are now coughing after that.
Yes.
Me from listening to it in her front truck. Go ahead, get a drink of water. I will thank Carol Holm, who says, take the leap. You have so much serious news. 1A, Science Friday, all of it is awesome. I don't have television, and this is how I get all of my information.
Sam Weigel says, I love local news and I want to support it. And Corey Clybourne says, listen daily and it is time to donate. I would be devastated if this station wasn't here. I would too.
Sonia Duncan really likes Science Friday, the news, and listens quite a bit. Laura Schwinn loves NPR. Maybe you do too. The number to call to contribute is 513-419-7155 or give online at WVXU.org.
I love my dog as much as I love you. But you may say my dog will always come through. All he asks from me.
Well, I love my dog. I don't know if I love my dog as much as I love my husband, but you know, it's right up there. We have a special thank you going out for a special treat for people who love their dogs.
Yes, when you donate to WVXU, we have another donor who's automatically giving $3 to the United Pet Fund. You're supporting your local public radio station and giving back to a local animal in need. And the United Pet Fund, it's been around since 2010. It's a local nonprofit that distributes food and supplies to hundreds of animal shelters in our region. So give right now, 513-419-7155.
Or you can give online, WVXU.org, working to raise the last $13,000 of the fund drive with your help.
Democracy in a desert near D.C.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Progressive Insurance. The Name Your Price tool provides a range of coverage options. Progressive.com. Price and coverage match limited by state law. And by the podcast Ripple, a new investigative podcast from Western Sound and APM Studios. Listen now to Ripple.
Hello, I'm David Brancaccio. I've been traveling to what are called news deserts in Super Tuesday states to hear about the business models that are failing or informing voters as they go to the polls on Tuesday. Today, voices from a desert only an hour's drive from the center of American politics.
It is this newspaper's desire to print all of the news throughout King George County.
A paper called the King George News.
For your convenience, we have secured correspondence in every section of the county whose name...
Not hot off the presses, but yellowed in a museum. It's from June 1948.
Renee Parker. I'm currently the president of the King George Historical Society.
That vintage paper bit the dust decades ago. The last local paper published in this county was a different one called the King George Journal. Joel Davis was the final editor and publisher who valiantly kept things going for about a year till the final edition in 2017.
When I first got the job, 3 of the largest advertisers called within a month and, pulled their advertising, and I asked why, and they said, well, it's free on Facebook. Can you beat free? Well, obviously not.
Again, Renee Parker at the Historical Society, who once ran for county supervisor.
Unfortunately, there are, whatever percent of the population will get whatever they need off Facebook. So they're reading whatever, somebody's hoping that they'll believe because they believe it, which can be good and can be bad. We see a lot of that in our local elections.
The Freelance Star newspaper, published a half hour away in Fredericksburg, does have an ace reporter named Kathy Dyson, who gets over here when she can. It's owned by Lee Enterprises, which has papers in 25 states, and its staff, like so many newspapers around the country, given low ad revenue, is much reduced nowadays. Here's King George resident Lynn Pardy.
I do family law. I work with children mostly, and I work down in Montrose.
Half-hour away.
And they have papers down there. I can read and know what the kids are doing at the high school. I can read what's going on locally in their government.
My name's Kara Gonzalez. I recently finished a 4-year term on the local county school board.
A lot of reporters doing sustained coverage. What was your experience in terms of news media interest?
I'm going to say none, but I'd have to think about whether or not that's accurate. So you mentioned the Freelance Star, the Fredericksburg paper. I'm trying to think. We probably made a couple, maybe an article or two in there, maybe.
Well, my name is Ed Jones. I spent the first 18 years of my life living on the Navy base, which is the largest employer in King George County.
Stand by,
That's archive sound since the weekend we visited. Crews were not firing tests down the Potomac from Naval Surface Warfare Center, Dahlgren.
From the time I was in high school to almost 50 years later, I worked at the Freelance Star newspaper in Fredericksburg. I had just about every position at that paper you can think of, from film critic to editorial page editor to editor. It's ironic that the county is larger than it's ever been, more complex than it's ever been, and yet the news resources are depleted.
Even with smartphones full of information.
It has to be credible information. So how do you determine whether it's credible? Well, back in the day, if you trusted your local newspaper, they're not trying to throw me a curveball.
Some newsstands here display the Northern Neck Sentinel, a free publication from 2 counties over. The online edition we saw had headlines comparing, quote, leftist violence to 1930s Germany, and a headline, Illegal Aliens Invade Region. There was an item of local news from King George about county supervisors getting sworn in. This evolving media landscape places burdens on residents.
My name is Adam Simonal, concerned citizen, live in King George, Virginia. Since 1983, I'm a retired engineer. I used to do my thing for the Navy. Force protection basically teaches us not to talk too much about it.
You have a theory that people create their own news deserts?
Yeah, I do. I think that if you don't want to look at mainstream media and then compare it to other media, and you only want to look
Oh. Well, cancel that. We all have the same idea. Find somewhere to eat lunch. Starving.
Good evening. It is 6:19 and 44 degrees inside. Here's a look at the roads for you. We've got stop-and-go traffic on I-75 southbound between Glendale Milford Road and Exit 14 and Paddock Road, Exit 9. There's also stop-and-go traffic on I-75 southbound between Western Hills Viaduct and Fort Washington Way, and a broken-down vehicle on the Brent Spence Bridge.
Support for NPR comes from this station and from Imaginable Futures, celebrating the hard work, commitment, and achievements of the 1 in 5 college students who are parents. More at imaginablefutures.com. From the estate of Joan B. Kropp, whose bequest serves as an enduring investment in the future of public radio and seeks to help NPR produce programming that meets the highest standards of public service in journalism and cultural expression. And from ECMC Foundation at ecmcfoundation.org.
This is All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Mary Louise Kelly.
And I'm Ari Shapiro. What happens when a prodigy grows up? Jacob Collier is finding the answer to that question. He burst onto the scene as a gifted teenager with YouTube videos where he played more than a dozen instruments and recorded all the vocals from his childhood bedroom in London. He won Grammys for each of his first 4 albums, and earlier this month he played piano to accompany the legend Joni Mitchell on stage at this year's awards ceremony. His new record is the culmination of a 4-album journey he's been on since 2018. It's called Jesse Volume 4, and it opens with a song called 100,000 Voices, featuring recordings of something Collier does in his live performances.
So over the last couple of years, something has begun to happen, or has grown as a format of music creation, which is, I wouldn't exaggerate by saying it's redefined how I think about life.
Wow, that's a lot.
It is a lot. So I've always been interested in blurring the line between performer and audience member. And what I've begun to do in the last few years has been conducting my audiences in song. One of my favorite ways to do this is to split the audience into between 3 and 6 different parts. As I say, I give the middle group F. I go, ooh, okay, you sing this note. And then the group to the left, I'll give them C. Ooh, and the group to the right, I'll give them A. Ooh, right, that's an F major chord. Delicious, nutritious F major chord. And then so from there, the kind of magic of the audience choir is to guide those notes to different notes. But without saying a word, without explaining what's going on, I look at the group of people and I point up or down. And there's this amazing process that happens where the audience kind of realizes how to move, and they realize that they already know how to move, even though I didn't teach them.
That's what amazes me, is they get the interval. Like, you don't have to say go up a third or go up a step. Like, somehow there's this communication that happens.
Right. It's very much like magic. It's certainly the closest thing to magic I've ever encountered. And, you know, it's an amazing thing, I think, as an artist, to begin to realize what you're chasing, what your North Star is. It's not immediately clear what you start. But what I've realized with this album, and the process of conducting all these audiences, and then the process of recording all these audiences from all around the world, and putting them all on this record, all on Jesse Volume 4, is just how much I love the human voice, and how much of my fascination with music orbits it.
You say that the experience of making these 4 albums has helped you figure out your purpose, your mission, your sound. But this is not a narrow album. This is a sprawling album in genre, in voices, in styles. Can you articulate what makes something sound like a Jacob Collier piece of music?
Oh gosh, that's a big old question. Well, I do think about joy a lot. And I think joy can sometimes be misunderstood. I think some people think of joy as like being really glad and really happy all the time. I think joy is just about being alive. It's about waking up to what's happening around you. And absorbing it and releasing it. And you know, there are songs on this album that are like crazy, joyous anthems, and then there are songs on this album which are really kind of slow to evolve and have an inherent stillness to them. But I think all of them have that quality of absorbent of life, and you know, some of these songs are like my sonic diary. You know, I've travelled so much around the world in the last few years. One of the things I'm most proud of Jesse Volume 4 is that it features acclaimed and beloved artists from every continent. It's an amazing thing to get to absorb all these different stories and masters at work.
The album includes people who you have met over the course of your travels, and also one person who you've known literally your entire life, your mother.
Yes.
Who is a renowned violinist in her own right, Susie Collier. She appears on Box of Stars Part 2 because the more than 5-minute Box of Stars Part 1 just couldn't contain it all, I guess.
No, I guess not. Yeah, so Susie Collier not only plays the violin, but she's also an astonishing conductor. She conducted all of the orchestra on this album. Some of my first ever musical memories were watching her rouse music into existence. And when you see someone raise their hand, raise their eyes, and throw energy around the room like that, it never leaves you.
Yeah.
And I knew with this album that she was the only person alive who would really understand and bring those colours out of the orchestra.
The last song of the album, the last track of this entire 4-album project, is called World, O World, and it returns us to the human voice. It's an a cappella choral piece, and compared to everything that came before it, it feels so traditional and conservative. Like, it reminds me of Aaron Copland's interpretation of traditional American folk tunes. Why did you want to end the journey here?
So, when I was about 19 years old, so about 10 years ago, I went to hear a choir sing in London. They're called the Aeolians of Oakwood University. And I left that room a different person from when I walked in. And to my absolute delight, they'd seen some of my YouTube videos and they knew who I was. And so the conductor said, you know, one day you should write us a piece, Jacob. And I sort of thought, gosh, I don't know if I ever could. You know, that's a very tall order. And so it took me 5 years to kind of muster up the courage to do it. And one of the reasons I love it the most is that it's not me singing. I'm not on that piece at all. The first song on Jesse Volume 1 is actually the same. I'm not singing that one either. And so I like the idea of bookending the whole adventure with the sound of voices, but not my voices. It feels somehow accurate to all the things that I've learned.
Jacob, you've been described as a prodigy for so long, and you're going to turn 30 in August.
True.
So, what do you think happens when a prodigy grows up?
Well, it's an interesting question. In a sense, if you describe someone as a prodigy or a genius, it's not necessarily helpful to the person, but it's also not necessarily helpful to you. It's almost like saying, here's a person who is outside my understanding of what is possible or normal, and so I'm going to just let this person do their own thing and kind of not meet them in a place. I think over the last 10 years, I think I've really sought the root of what music is for, which I think to me feels far less to do with something being very fascinating or interesting or virtuosic or complex and anything like that. And it just comes down to, in a sense, something being very, very simple, which is just the foundational kind of the root of being alive, the root of being human, which actually, if you look at it closely, is deeply complex, you know. But I also think it's deeply simple. So I suppose I can only really speak from my own experience. I'm growing up as a human, as we all are, and I still feel like I'm just getting started, honestly.
Jacob Collier, it is always such a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much.
Likewise. Thanks ever so much.
The final installment of his 4-album project, Jesse Volume 4, is out now.
You're listening to All Things Considered from NPR News.
Support comes from Music and Event Management Inc. presenting Maggie Rogers' The Don't Forget Me Tour with the Japanese House at the Icon Festival stage at Smale Park on Friday, June 7th. Tickets available 10 a.m. this Friday at Ticketmaster.com. Maggie Rogers with the Japanese House live in Cincinnati, Friday, June 7th. Support comes from Journey Advisory Group with a focus on understanding the daily decisions that lead to a financially healthy life. Journey helps make choosing financial health as routine as walking your dog. They offer clients a personalized approach and advice in wealth management, estate, retirement, and college planning. To learn more about caring for your financial health, visit journeyadvisory.group.
Good evening. This is 91.7 WBXU. I'm Katie Lucio. We had a beautiful day today. Tonight, it will be partly cloudy and chilly again with a low around 30 degrees. Tomorrow, mostly cloudy with some spotty rain showers.
Marketplace is supported by Twilio Segment. Segment brings customer data together for real-time insights, so companies know each individual like they are their only customer. Learn more at segment.com.
Prices are up, but so is income. What to make of the latest inflation report? From American Public Media, this is Marketplace.
Marketplace is supported by Betterment, the automated investing platform that helps make it easy to be invested for the long term. Learn more at betterment.com. Investing involves risk. And by Progressive Insurance.
Real interest on your money, especially if you're a person with a lot of savings. After the financial crisis, interest rates were really, really low for a very, very long time, basically until 2022. During that period, you might use an online bank to get like 2% on your savings, and that was good, but that's really not much money. So a lot of people just thought, I mean, who cares? I'm just going to leave my money at my big bank, even though they're paying me nothing. But now, with the Federal Reserve having raised rates a lot since early 2022, you can really earn a significant amount, especially if you use one of these online banks.
How have the banks responded to your stories and to these complaints that they're basically offering much higher rates to new customers than they're giving to existing customers?
Well, a lot of the customers themselves have reached out to the banks and asked for like back interest, and I haven't heard of a single situation where they haven't given that. I mean, they will increase the rate on your account if you say, hey, why am I earning this low rate and not the high rate that you're advertising? The banks will say, okay, well, let's get you in that high rate account. And each bank has responded differently to us. Obviously, we contacted them for comment. The bank that is doing this in kind of the most extreme manner, UFB, they didn't respond to us at all.
So what can customers do about this, if anything?
I think people just need to be pretty vigilant about their interest rates. You know, make sure you're checking your statements or your online banking portal and seeing what your rate is there. You might not be going to the actual website all the time, and that seems to be how, you know, this fell through the cracks of a lot of customers.
All right, Rachel Louise Ensign wrote about customers not getting necessarily the advertised interest rates on their savings accounts. Thanks so much, Rachel.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Want to alarm anyone who's driving right now, but do you ever think about what your smart car knows about you? The Biden administration has some concerns. Today, the Commerce Department announced plans to investigate the national security risks of connected vehicles and could consider restrictions on auto technology from foreign countries, particularly China. But the U.S. has other reasons to want to limit the flow of cheaper Chinese-made cars into the U.S. As Marketplace's Sabri Benishore reports, it's a reminder that national security and economics are never all that far apart.
Cars can, for sure, be national security risks.
There's tens of computers inside cars, so someday even hundreds of computers.
Todd Moore is VP of Data Security Products at Thales.
And anytime you're dealing with computers and data, that data can be maliciously intercepted. There's always a threat.
There have been cases where internet-connected vehicles have been hacked, government officials have been spied on. But that is not the only thing going on here. Looming behind this rule about internet-connected cars is the specter of Chinese electric vehicles that, to quote Elon Musk, could demolish competitors. Tu Li is with consulting firm Sino Auto Insights. He's a big fan of the U.S. auto industry.
I grew up in Metro Detroit. My whole family works in the automotive space. My first job was at General Motors.
But he travels to China. He's driven the latest Chinese electric vehicles, of which there are many.
To sit in these vehicles and drive them, that's what scares me. They're competitive today.
Chinese EVs are at least just as advanced and high quality as any U.S. competitors, he says. But they are a lot cheaper. This is, he says, partly the result of subsidies, and partly the result of intense innovation and competition within China. Wendy Cutler is president of the Asia Society Policy Institute and says so far, the U.S. has been able to keep these
The islands lie off the southeastern coast of China's Fujian province and are effectively controlled by Taiwan. China's Taiwan Affairs Office spokesperson Zhu Fenglian affirmed China will safeguard the legitimate rights of its compatriots and will not allow a recurrence. A subsidiary of Japanese electronics giant Sony Group is cutting about 900 workers around the globe to streamline its operations. That's about 8% of its workforce. Sony Interactive Entertainment made the announcement on Tuesday. The company handles the gaming business and is responsible for creating Sony's home game consoles, including the PlayStation. The company says the gaming industry has changed immensely, and structural reform and streamlining are needed to achieve sustainable growth. The firm has downgraded its sales outlook for its gaming business and other sectors for the current fiscal year by nearly $1.4 billion. It now forecasts sales of just over $27 billion. The number of displaced people fleeing Myanmar to neighboring Thailand continues to grow since the coup 3 years ago. The Japanese government is providing new medical vehicles to support them, and a handover ceremony was held Wednesday in a border town. 70,000 of the displaced are said to be in western Thailand. A public hospital there has been providing free medical services to them using mobile medical vehicles. But the cars have become old, so the Japanese government has provided 2 new ones under the Official Development Assistance Framework.
We will continue to provide detailed support in cooperation with NGOs and international organizations.
The Japanese government has been unable to provide new direct assistance in Myanmar as the military is in charge of projects. This is Asian View from NHK World Japan.
What if everything you ever wanted, all your hopes and fears, suddenly start falling from the sky like rain? For real. On the next Snap Judgment, money truck. Snap Judgment. Do not miss it.
Sunday evenings at 6 and Thursday nights at 10 on 91.7 WBXU.
From New York Times, I'm Michael Navarro. This is The Daily. Today, a Times investigation has revealed how applesauce laced with high levels of lead, which poisoned hundreds of children across the U.S., sailed through a food safety system meant to protect American consumers. I spoke with my colleague, Christina Jewett, about what she found. It's Thursday, February 29th. Christina, where does this story start?
So last summer, families all over America started to have sort of a mysterious problem. Their kids had startlingly high blood lead levels. And this is extremely alarming for all these families because lead poisoning can lead to behavior problems, learning problems, developmental problems as well. And basically no one knows where this is coming from.
Our daughter loves makeup and doing her nails.
Dresses.
And our son loves cars and airplanes.
Loud exhaust.
And one of the families in this situation is Nicole Peterson and Thomas Young. They have 2 little kids, a little boy who's 1 and a daughter who's 3.
And our son had gone to his first annual checkup, and they did a finger prick, and his blood level is high.
And during their routine pediatric visits for the summer, they learn that the kids have high blood levels. We're talking about triple to quadruple the CDC's level of concern, basically.
Wow. It's kind of like a nightmare, right? It was tough, very tough.
So that gets reported to the county. The health department sends out an inspector. He goes through their house with sort of this lead x-ray gun, and he's shooting everything.
Every pot, pan, toys. I'm opening up the rice cooker, you know, to literally test everything.
This is a 5-hour process.
The door frame, there was some in there, but there was no concern because there was no chipping, no wear and tear.
Yeah, it was encapsulated, is what he had mentioned.
He finds some lead in a doorway in the basement. He finds lead in a figurine that's sort of a family heirloom.
Some antique birds that my grandmother had given me, but out of reach. They're seasonal. The kids are not putting them in their mouth.
None of these things are what the kids are touching or eating or really playing with at all. So it was really sort of a mystery.
Right.
And then the kids are screened again.
They get checked in the middle of August.
And their lead level doubled.
The numbers have gone up into the 20s. And so now
it's 24.
Yeah, everyone is, of course, very, very concerned, freaking out. They're saying that this has never happened before in county history, that this is the first time that they've seen this. Thomas and I weren't sleeping, we're not eating. Like, this is driving us crazy and tormenting us.
So the family is freaking out. The parents get their levels tested, and it's normal. So now they're really facing a mystery. I mean, what are the kids exposed to that the parents are not? So the county goes out to daycare, looks at everything there.
They spent a few hours at the daycare.
Nothing.
They didn't really have any answers.
And then the parents start a food diary.
We all eat the same food. We don't eat different food. The kids don't get one meal and we get another meal.
And they realize that there's one thing that the kids eat that they don't.
The only thing that they eat that we don't eat are these pouches.
And it's these foil packets of cinnamon applesauce that the family gives the kids as a routine snack.
And they loved it. They would devour it, and they would eat it on the playground, and we were just out and about.
Right, I mean, every parent, me included, gives their kids a pouch of applesauce. It is the universal food of the American toddler.
Exactly.
So what happens once the family narrows this down to applesauce?
So the county health inspector comes out. They take samples of the packets. They take it to the state health lab in North Carolina, and they run some tests.
I think they contacted us on Friday.
Yeah, they called us on a Friday and said that they had gotten the report back from the lab and that it had tested positive.
And what they find is basically an incredibly high level of lead in this applesauce. They forward that to the FDA, which quickly turns around and works with the company that made it to issue a recall.
It was just so nice to have like a resolution. Like, we know where this is coming from now, and we don't have to drive ourselves crazy with this constant nightmare. It's nice to have an answer.
And so millions of these packets that were sold at Dollar Tree under the name Wanabana, and also at Schnucks Market and Weiss Market grocery stores under the store brand, those are all recalled.
Wow.
And then the FDA tries to figure out how this lead got into the applesauce in the first place.
And what do they find?
So they pretty quickly narrow in on the cinnamon in the applesauce. There's this known problem in the spice industry where sometimes people will add lead chromate powder to sort of make the color pop.
And what is lead chromate, Christina?
Lead chromate is an orange-yellow powder. It's still used in industrial applications overseas. And even though it's toxic, sometimes people illegally add it to spices, especially with turmeric or curry powder, that sometimes this is poured in to sort of bulk up the spices, like a drug dealer sort of cuts the cocaine with flour or sugar or something. So the FDA is realizing that could be what was happening in Ecuador, where this applesauce was processed. And officials from Ecuador are able to trace the cinnamon in the applesauce up the supply chain to a spice grinder who they think is responsible.
Got it. So the FDA suspects that somebody grinding cinnamon is adding lead chromate to it, basically to make more money on the production of that cinnamon.
Exactly. And then it went to the company that made the applesauce, which shipped it off to the U.S. It landed in the ports of Baltimore and Miami and ended up right on grocery shelves to be handed to American infants and toddlers.
And how many children, Christina, ended up consuming this lead-poisoned applesauce?
We know the kids in 44 states had this applesauce. The CDC has said that about 468 kids consumed this applesauce and had high levels of lead in their blood. The median level of lead in their blood was about 6 times higher than what we saw with the Flint lead and water crisis about a decade ago.
Wow.
Yeah. And as far as how many kids total, it could be so many more. There's probably plenty of parents who didn't have a blood screening, who didn't connect it to the applesauce. And there's certainly others that didn't meet the case definition by the time this was discovered, which, you know, requires a certain level of lead in the blood.
Okay, so you're saying at the very least, nearly 500 very small children were consuming this contaminated applesauce, and it's discovered that their blood is filled with lead. That's the very best case scenario.
Yeah, this is one of the worst toxic exposures of U.S. kids in decades. I cover the FDA, which has a big infrastructure to protect our food supply. And so I wanted to understand how this occurred. So I teamed up with another reporter, Will Fitzgibbon, who works for a nonprofit called The Examination. It's a global health news organization. And we wound up getting thousands of pages of documents from Ecuador, tracing their investigation, and interviewed a number of food safety experts to really figure out how the system failed to detect basically poisonous applesauce going on to store shelves all over America.
We'll be right back.
The Daily is supported by Buyside from the Wall Street Journal. Buyside's reviews and recommendations help consumers decide how to spend their time and money at WSJ.com/buyside. And by Progressive Insurance. On the road and at home, customers can simplify their insurance needs and protect what's important by bundling home and auto with Progressive Insurance. Learn more about Progressive and bundling at Progressive.com. Go deeper into the day's most pressing stories with New York Times journalists, trusted sources, and the people affected. The Daily from the New York Times, distributed by American Public Media.
Gardening is not a dangerous hobby, or is it? On the next Cultivating Place, Jennifer Jewell welcomes gardener and author Marta McDowell to talk about her book, Gardening Can Be Murder. That's Saturday morning at 7 and Wednesday night at 10 on WVXU and WMUB.
Support comes from Wiebold Studio. The artists of Wiebold Studio repair, conserve, and restore paintings and frames, metal items, collectibles, antiques, family heirlooms, and items of sentimental value. You can drop in weekdays between 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. or visit Wiebold.com to learn more. WIEBOLD.com.
But there's an old man behind me saying, "Go on up there and sing, son. I can tell by looking at you, you're a singer." That was the moment that I realized how true the old adage is that looks can be deceiving.
Join us next time for Stories of Being Stuck. That's the Moth Radio Hour from PRX. Sunday nights at 8 and Thursday nights at 11 on 91.7 WVXU. The preservation of journalism is critically important. Including WVXU in your estate plans ensures reliable news and information will always be available in the Cincinnati community for generations to come. Ask your tax advisor about including WVXU in your will or trust. More information is available at WVXU.org.
A Times investigation has revealed how applesauce laced with high levels of lead, which poisoned hundreds of children across the U.S., sailed through a food safety system meant to protect American consumers. So once you all conduct this investigation, what do you find? How did our regulatory system allow this applesauce to enter the U.S.?
So in the U.S., the food safety system is pretty robust. There are boots on the ground in every state, routine inspections of food-making facilities, and there's some precedent of criminal prosecutions for big failures. So things like salmonella and listeria get discovered pretty routinely. The biggest fears have always been about food that comes from outside the U.S.,
right,
where we know less. You know, there can be things added for financial gain, there can be pesticides we don't allow in the U.S., and these fears really grow in the late 2000s with a scandal in China.
It's all about the chemical melamine. It can make protein levels look normal in quality tests if milk has been watered down to cheat consumers.
People were adding this powder called melamine to infant formula and pet food. And what it did was mimic protein powder, but it was also really toxic.
Nervous parents have rushed children to hospitals when it was revealed baby formula was laced with the industrial chemical melamine.
So 6 babies died in China.
Why didn't the government test the formula more carefully, asked this mother.
Hundreds of thousands of babies overseas got sick, and dogs and cats all around America got sick and also died.
It's a black eye for China's leadership. Consumer confidence in Chinese goods is falling to an all-time low.
So that creates some impetus to change the way the U.S. oversees food that's imported from outside the U.S. And that winds up sort of coming together in 2011 with President Obama signing the Food Safety Modernization Act. That does a number of things. One of them is to really try to plug the holes in the system of imported food that are meant to prevent, really, what happened in China from happening again in the U.S.
And how does the new law envision that working?
Well, it does 2 big things. One is there would be more overseas inspections of food-making facilities. So the FDA would actually send people into the food plants. They would take a look at all their processes, their procedures, their test results.
The Daily is supported by Seed. Seed's DS-01 is a 24-strain 2-in-1 probiotic and prebiotic engineered to survive digestion, support healthy regularity, and promote whole body health. Learn more at seed.com/public.
And by Bitwarden. The Bitwarden Password Manager stores unlimited logins, secure notes, credit cards, and more with access on any device. More at bitwarden.com. Distribution of The Daily is made possible by American Public Media.
The Daily is powered by the journalism of the New York Times and is distributed by APM. American Public Media. You can go deeper into the stories you hear on The Daily at nytimes.com/thedaily. That's it for The Daily. I'm Michael Obama. See you tomorrow.
Some news for NPR app users. NPR is combining the NPR One app into the NPR app very soon. All the same features, but now in one place. Users of either don't have to do anything, but we wanted you to know it's happening. You're listening to 91.7 WVXU. Today Explained is coming up at 7:30.
Hi, it's Steve Inskeep.
And I'm Michelle Martin.
You know, people collect all sorts of things. Stamps, antique lamps, sports memorabilia.
If you happen to collect cars and you're looking to make room in your collection, look no further than donating it to this very public radio station.
Pickup is free, and it could mean hundreds of dollars in support.
More information about car donations at WVXU.org.
If you love jazz, your smart speaker can now play jazz music 24 hours a day. Enable the Cincinnati Jazz skill and say, Alexa, open Cincinnati Jazz to begin listening.
Last week, the Alabama Supreme Court said that frozen embryos were children, and boom. Just like that, the United States had a new culture war.
I warned that red states would come for IVF, and now they have.
When you talk about an embryo, you are talking about, to me, that's a life.
Obviously, an embryo transfer doesn't mean that it's a guarantee that you'll end up with a baby. But without that, there's no hope of us having a baby.
The vast majority of Americans support...
Hi there, what can I get you today at McDonald's?
I have a mobile order,
What is it?
MH46.
Alright, hon, have a good night. Come around.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Are you Russell?
Yep.
Did you want that receipt?
No thanks.
You're good to go.
Thanks.
Have a good one.